All right, how's everybody doing today? So we are continuing on with my spiritual journey from the awakening, leading into the dark night of the soul. So here's the juicy part. It's gonna be good, everybody. So stay tuned. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, so that you can follow this story as I release it to you guys. So all right, let's jump into it. So where did we leave off? I had been just sort of there was like a divine intervention that happened. That's the only way I can describe it because I literally felt a physical presence, and coming from someone that you know wasn't even sure that ghosts were real, spirits, let alone God or angels or anything like that. Certainly didn't believe in Jesus Christ. So it was a big step for me in the right direction. And I, at the time, like did mention this last time, but I'll just touch on it again. I was working a seasonal asphalt sales job, so I had all this downtime on my hands, and I was honestly spending some days close to 16 hours a day researching just anything that I could. And like I had mentioned before, anything that I was searching, it didn't really matter the wording I was using. The right information was coming my way. So it was a really cool experience, and this just sort of made me feel like this was even more magical than it already was. So the bliss went on for about 3 months. Because of the sales job I was currently doing and I was really good at, I decided to jump into the sales with Vivint. So I went to Winnipeg, did all that. This didn't pan out for me there. I just couldn't convince myself that this was a necessity for people to buy, and it made it really hard for me to sell. So kind of coming out of a depressive state. It was actually starting for me now, the dark night, but I hadn't quite realized that yet because I was still in such a state of bliss at all times. So when I came back, that's when me and my mom went to Mexico, right? We had some fun out there. I wasn't drinking at all, but I did start to drink in Mexico, all inclusive resort. Of course, I'm going to. So I had some drinks while I was there, and um, I don't want to say this really triggered anything because I don't think it did, but it definitely lowered my vibration. And for someone that was so new to this, I didn't realize that I didn't realize what that meant. So when my vibration would lower, it could be a really scary thing, and it could really affect my mental state because I would start to think like, I'm doing something wrong, or my whole world is it's just not as magical anymore. I was very spiritually immature, so to speak, and that just takes time. That takes going through the dark night. It takes many experiences to develop a little bit of spiritual maturity, but it happens quickly. Um, After the Mexico thing, I got a job, and this is sort of where this episode's going to pick up from because that was all just sort of a rehash of what I spoke on the first two episodes. So this new job, it was I was actually working with my dad's company, and I just got hired on as like the lot boy, basically, just cleaning up around the place. And for such a insignificant job, so to speak, it's very low down on the totem pole of importance. I made the most of it, and coming from this new found love for life, this spiritual awakening, it had really made me a different person in a really positive way. It made me stand out amongst other people, that's for sure. So, and it would have been if you put myself from 5 years prior next to this version of me at that point, it would be night and day, right? It was just I had a drive, I guess, that a lot of people don't seem to have. This reflected on me in a positive way, and it made me stand out really early on. So the place was a mess, and my job being the lot boy, kind of keep it tidy and organized, I did just that. I organized the tool bin to a point where it was pristine. Like everything was organized perfectly, and it was a disaster. Like a bomb had gone off in there. So when the boss saw what I had done, he really was impressed by this, and he told the owner. The owner quickly took a liking to me for that, because he could see, wow, this guy, he's basically the janitor, but he's really excelling at that. And that's sort of something that stuck with me all throughout this time. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life, be the absolute best at it, and you'll get ahead in life. You'll make it places. So this went on for a while. About maybe a month in, just me doing the best I could every day there, I got recognized for it. And we used to have these monthly meetings, and then like a weekly smaller meeting. And at the monthly meeting, they like called me up, and everybody sort of clapped for me and gave me recognition on what a good job I'd been doing. And they promoted me to a business unit manager. So this was the warehouse was sort of mine. I was in all the inventory, and then I was the assistant manager of the logistics side of things. So it was about, I think they had 16 trucks, or 12 to 16 trucks, something like that. And my job was to sort of manage these runs across the border. That was a little more intense than the ones that were around the area, because those pickups, those drop offs, they required like paperwork that needed to be printed, and the truck driver needed to have it with him crossing the border. So it was a pretty intense job, and high stress. And life started to happen. After you work 10 hours at a job, you don't always want to come home and do an hour of meditation like I was doing. Um, you don't need to do an hour of meditation, but at this point in my life, that's kind of how I saw things. I felt like that's what you needed. Honestly, 10 minutes a day in the morning, 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes before bed. You throw in some grounding, some barefoot grass walking into that. You're, you're, I can't speak for everybody, but I know that's what works for me. So this job was stressing me out, and based on just working, I was burning the candlestick at both ends, so they say, right? I had no energy left to do my spiritual practices that were keeping me grounded and in alignment. Or was just this the beginning of the dark night of the soul? Like I seem to, that's what I think was going on looking back on it now. So the dark night of the soul is essentially all those traumas, all those tendencies, all those negative thoughts, all those um, it's a culmination of all the negative shadow energy that's trapped inside of us. We can release this through shadow work. Um, that's the easiest way to do it, through meditation, purging, crying, things like that. Just by being in a state of total relaxation, your body will naturally allow these things to flow out of you, go to the surface, to be released. That just means it comes to your attention, essentially. Um, so I had dabbled in the past with drugs, after high school. I experimented with a lot of Molly, ecstasy, things like that. That was sort of my drug of choice with my friends at the time. It got to the point where we couldn't really have social outings, social interactions without having that in our system. And because it was, we were addicted to partying, essentially. So Friday night, Saturday night, there had to be something going on. We were there. If there wasn't something going on, we would make something happen. And it got to the point where my brain was so fried from the MDMA because it's a psychoactive amphetamine. So you build a tolerance to it very quickly, which means you're increasing the amounts of it that you're taking very rapidly. And this started to affect my brain, where I would have brain zaps. So I'd be in the middle of talking and completely lose my train of thought. Um, it was just a constant state of anxiety when I wasn't high, depression, like emotional mood swings, just sadness, that this deep sadness from lack of serotonin, I guess. Yeah, it's a really unforgiving drug when you abuse it. So I sort of just fell into a state of depression again, working this job. And like I said, having my energy taken, but nothing coming back to me. And that is why we need to ensure that the job, the vocation that we're doing in life, we genuinely love. Like this, for me, talking to you guys, making these videos, it's something I actually enjoy doing. Going to so many of the jobs I had in the past, it became an obligation, right? And if your work is an obligation, that's a sign you're not in the right job. Or it's a sign that you need to pivot something in your mental, how you view things, what your perception is, change that so that you can have that reciprocal energy. Basically, feel like you're making a difference in the world at your job, and you're going to have that reciprocal energy exchange. Um, so this kind of put me in a funk, and I turned back to cocaine. I had somebody message me, and they had some high heat cocaine, and I gave that a try. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, because I would have been like 19 at the time when I had tried it before. And it was probably, I mean, whoever the lovely drug dealer was selling to a 19-year-old probably wasn't the best stuff. And I really felt nothing from it. This time, though, this was definitely better stuff, higher quality, and it, in combination of the alcohol, um, really blew the doors off me, so to speak. And this immediately became a way for me to just sort of shut off the noise of the world and forget about my problems. And this is probably the first time in my life that drugs had really gotten to that level. It was always sort of a thing to do for fun, which it is a form of escapism, but this was like I actually wanted to escape my life for a little bit. Something new. So this certainly was the dark night of the soul now at this point. You know, those unresolved traumas, things that I wasn't dealing with, were surfacing, and I was trying to cope with this new uncomfortable energy that I was sitting in. So this went on for 4 years. In that time, I mean, there's a lot to cover in those 4 years. I don't want to spend too much time diving in deep. I think I'll save that for other clips, other episodes. Um, so I'm just going to give you guys kind of the rough outline here, and then we'll dive more into the nitty gritty details, and we'll create themes for those videos. Um, so the 4 years, it was intense. I went through a nasty car accident in that time. That was actually Friday the 13th in March 2020. That was basically right when we all went into lockdown. So for me, I was stuck on the couch after I had totaled a vehicle, the steel wire cutting through the vehicle, just missing the left side of my body by probably about that much. I couldn't walk for the first time in my life. I had to shuffle walk because every time I would raise my leg, as soon as that hip area there would what do you call it, flex, I immediately would get nerve pain all down my right side, from my right glute all the way to my toes, sciatic nerve pain. And it was the first time in my life I couldn't physically do something that I wanted to do. Wanted to walk to the store, 15-minute walk. That was impossible. I got about 5 minutes out of my house and I ended up having to basically give up because it was too difficult. So, what landed me here that fateful day when I was driving under the influence of alcohol, Xanax, cocaine, um, uh, opiate pills. I'm not sure which ones I took, morphine or something like that. Um, really dark time in my life. I was allowing the demons to run my life, and I felt in a state of hopelessness 24/7. Every day I'd wake up, I wasn't sure what sort of chaos would ensue in my life that day. But man, did I learn a lot of lessons through those years. Looking back on it now, it was horrible in it. I mean, absolute hell on earth, really. Um, and it wasn't just the addiction, it was everything that went along with it. So, May 2023 rolled around, and I decided, with the help of family, it's actually a little bit of a funny story there. So, the vehicle that I was driving, it was just falling apart because I would try not to, but I would end up taking Xanax and drinking, and not always drinking, sometimes just the Xanax, and I would end up driving and thinking I was fine in the moment, but the next day, looking back on it, I had no memory of it. Or I'd have a memory of like my mirror, my passenger side mirror, hitting one of those like reflective things on this, like just horrible, horrible stuff. My car was falling apart. Hungover. I left a friend's house hungover one morning and went to go open my door handle, and the handle broke off in my hand. And I looked at it, and this was a regular occurrence in my life. I mean, the universe was really trying its hardest to course correct me, but I was just being so stubborn, so controlled by the addiction, the drugs, that I had no hope in hell. And yeah, that had to be seen through. It had to get so bad to the point where I was just begging to be released from that pain, that I finally decided to check myself into recovery. Because I had done this prior in 2017, it was a very different place that I was coming from, right? It was hard for me to accept I needed help for this to overcome it, because back in 2017, I was coming from a place of young boy, immature party lifestyle, where I had the drugs there, and for me to quit then, it was totally different, because it was like, I had just had this new divine intervention that filled me with love and light and just made everything euphoric and magical, and I didn't want drugs and darkness in my life then. This time around was different. I had nothing to be I had very little to be grateful for. We always have things to be grateful for, but I was in pain. I had no muscle mass. I had basically um, spent every dollar to my name. I owed money to debt collectors, things like that. It was a really stressful point in time. I had no vehicle because it basically fell apart on me. The rental I was living in, I was moving out of that at the time. So there was just a lot going on. And it really made it so that I didn't feel like I had anything to be grateful for or to hang on to. And that's sort of what recovery did for me. I feel like when I went there, on day one, when I looked around the place, I had already made the decision that this is over. I'm here. Reality sort of set in that I was in recovery, and this wasn't going to be easy. But I made it through the next 3 months, and I had built up my body again in the gym while I was there. I sort of became like a light for a lot of guys there. I was using my personal training knowledge and things like that to sort of show the guys what the gym was all about and get them proud of, give them some confidence again, right? And of course, that just fed back to me, and it gave me more energy and more confidence and more joy and love. Um, and I actually started to think that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a voice for addicts and show them that it doesn't matter how dark things get, you can always get out of it, right? And I know people look at me, right, baby face, they think, how does this guy even, what does this guy know, right? Well, let me tell you something. I overdosed on fentanyl. Okay, I was in the back of an ambulance fighting for my life because I couldn't breathe and I didn't know what was going on. I just had this overwhelming anxiety that something wasn't right because the fentanyl had affected my brain to a point where I didn't know what was going on. But I made it through that because I have a purpose in this life that's beyond just me, and I need to share it with people. So, for anyone that just judges me based on how I look or how I talk or how I act, there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. And, you there's a lot of people out there that are scared of hell, but people that are spiritual have already lived through hell. So, when we sorry, that doesn't make, let me rephrase that. Some people are scared to die, are scared of hell, but people that have had a spiritual awakening have usually gone through hell. So we feel we got to share this message with people. That's something humanity doesn't do enough of. We don't share our stories because they're uncomfortable to talk about or whatever the reason may be. But our stories will help other people. So, for any of you listening, going through a hard time right now, just know that you're being refined. Even if it doesn't feel like it, you are being shaped and you're being molded into the perfect person you're always meant to be. You just have to never give up. You can't give up. You have to keep pushing through. Stop resisting. Stop fighting the universe, the changes it's trying to make in you. And you guys know it because we all have that intuition, that voice inside of us that tells us what we're doing is not right. We need to do this instead. We need to start listening to that voice. Thankfully, that's the new earth that we're moving into. It'll be governed by that sort of way of life, that way of thinking, and I can't wait for it. So that's probably where I'm going to leave off for today. I think we covered most of the dark night of the soul, and I'm just going to continue this journey right from where we left off next time. So for those of you still watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for the rest of this story. I'm going to be releasing it. My plan is Monday will be a generalized video about just things that I think are important to talk about, things that have happened throughout the week that have come up in my life. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I just want to save those days, for now at least, for continuation of this story. I want to get my message out there and kind of who I am before I start diving into specific topics with you guys. I want you guys to know who's speaking to you first. So I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.